The Talk Shop resumes here this morning, Monday, July 7th. If you're feeling lucky, Laramie Brewfest would like you to know that there's a ticket incentive today. $5 off your Brewfest entry fee when you buy 2 tickets. So you get $10 total when you take advantage of purchase today for your tickets for Laramie Brewfest. That's July 12th, I believe, in the Depot Green Space. And if memory serves me, one of the topics that's being considered in what will happen to the green space around the depot, the historic train depot. One such consideration: the green space will give way to parking spaces. Will this be to allow for the development of apartments in the Landmark Square property by current owner Stencil Group of South Dakota? It could be. And what would that mean to our 2042 50-year renewable lease from the property owners before the Stencil Group and before the Guerin family and the Bolin family? Those 2 entities were prior owners, but after the original agreement was set up. Now, get involved, folks. Get involved with your community in Albany County, in the city of Laramie. Pay attention. Can't encourage it enough. I've had a lot of texts and comments regarding these matters going on in the city. July 1st, 2025, the city of Laramie rolls out a fee structure for surface water management. That program new. Voted in December 2024, I think December 3rd, 2024. As the prior council was sunsetting in their 2024 business, they introduced and passed a fee. Is it a tax? Is it a fee? I'm betting it ends up in court because who can sustain this? Does it support affordable housing? Does it maintain business viability and not result in pass-on fees and pricing to us, the citizens? I don't know how it can not affect us. The price of everything continues to go up. Government continues to grow. Well, one such effort we make at the Talk Shop to alert you and to keep you abreast of happenings is to do this Monday morning preview of the City Council agenda. The meeting agenda this week: a work session, Tuesday night, 6 p.m. at the City Hall, 406 Ivinson Street. With us this morning, as each Monday morning in the 8 o'clock hour, Brett Glass. Brett Glass, good morning.
Good morning, Eric. Yes, this is your City Council update, and we'll be talking about the work session, which is going to happen on Tuesday night, July 8th at 6 o'clock p.m. in the City Council chambers. As most people in Laramie are aware, the City Council alternates weeks. Every other week it has a meeting, and then on the alternate weeks it has work sessions. And this is going to be an evening of work sessions. And there are 2 topics. The first one, which will occur after a comment period where the public can come and comment to council about pretty much anything, will be a presentation based on which talks about the history of the city's ranches and how they're being managed. Now, this is very interesting. The city of Laramie owns more land, ranch land, than most people realize. Here's a map from the presentation, which is going to be shown on Tuesday night.
The purple area, the significant area of the city of Laramie?
Okay, the purple area and the green areas are both city ranch land. And the city years ago bought the Monolith Ranch and more recently got control of the Bath Ranch. And, why in the world would the city want to own ranches and manage them or do anything with them? Well, the answer is water. The city owns the ranch land primarily for the water rights in the Laramie River. Now, right now, about 60% of the city's water comes from the Casper Aquifer, and the other 40% comes from the river in a typical year. Now, people are very worried that the aquifer will eventually become polluted. It may be depleted, and so we're very concerned about, in order to have Laramie continue to grow, the city officials and citizens in general are very concerned about the extent of our water supply. And so the city has to own this land in order to have the water rights. But then it's got all this land, and what does it do with it? Well, a few years ago, it was contemplated that Wyotech would become involved in this. They would teach ranch management and have their trainees sign up and do work on it. I don't know. It's not mentioned in the presentation, whose slides are up on the city website for Tuesday night. So I have no idea whether this plan is going forward. But what is said in the documents for the meeting on Tuesday night is that the city has essentially paused all uses of the city ranch land. There's a 3-year pause of leasing the ranches for grazing activities, as well as any other contracts that might possibly affect water or water rights. And the purpose of the session on Tuesday night, which I recommend that the public tune in on and chime in on, is to discuss what to do next. Clearly, we have all this land which is just sitting fallow. What do we do with it? Can we make money from it? How do we make sure that the water rights are preserved, but not limit development? Because as you can see from the map, this is a huge area, and right now nothing is being done with it. It can't be developed. It can't be used for housing. It can't be used for other things that might benefit the city. What do we do with it? Well, that's going to be discussed on Tuesday night, and that's the topic of the first portion of the work session.
Now, I do recall a presentation by the ranch manager employed by the city showing some fiscal gains in the investment, some land use being done with respect to city's operation of these properties, to where whether it was grass or alfalfa or crops or what have you, there was some revenue being shown in presentations.
That's correct.
How's that compared?
We had grazing leases. We still have the old ranch house from the Monolith Ranch, which sits out along a long muddy road going out into the ranch. If you follow it to the end, there is the obviously ancient ranch house out there that we've rented. Oddly enough, it's been a residential rental at times. But again, most or all of the commercial activities have been paused while the city figures out what to do, and it should do that soon. So this presentation hopefully is the start of a process which will lead to better management of that valuable resource.
Anybody knows about water rights in the state of Wyoming might be able to share more information than I know, but you got to use it or lose the right to it.
That is correct.
That's the fundamental principle of it, and therefore having a ranch manager liquidate and continue to use and operate using the water, pretty important, pretty viable for the interest of the investment that was made, whether or not we need it or necessarily should do that. Seems to be one more entity where commercial interests might be being bypassed by government interests in a case.
Well, Eric, you're absolutely right about the use it or lose it part, and we need to use it either for either for ranching, or we need to run the pipelines to it so that we can actually use it as part of the city's water supply. It's one or the other. But if we leave those water rights unused, and they date back they date back to the 19th century, then we potentially lose it. So we do need to work on that. Again, the public and people who are more knowledgeable than me, because I will be the first to admit I am not an expert on ranch management, should chime in. We need to do more with it. I mean, it's nice that we built the solar farm. It's a good use of good use of vast tracts of land. But most of it is sitting fallow and idle right now, and we should be doing more.
Thank you. What other topics are being covered in the work session tomorrow night?
Okay, the second topic is interesting. It's amendment number 1 to the Professional Services Agreement for the Street PCI Evaluation and System Implementation Project. Okay, that's a lot of jargon. What does it mean? Well, back in 2022, the city contracted with a third-party company. This is unfortunately too common. The city doesn't do work itself. It outsources it to third-party companies for a large amount of money, about $250,000, to evaluate the condition of the city's streets and sidewalks. And this company was going to come in and use machines to do this and do very accurate mapping of where everything was and feed it into the city's GIS, Geographical Information System, so that it was possible to figure out when and where to do street repairs and sidewalk repairs and other such things. Well, here we are 3 years later, and that work has not been completed. The company that was hired to do it has had mergers and acquisitions and all sorts of things going on with it, but they haven't finished the job. And they are going to give a presentation tonight to try to sell the city on not only letting them, excusing them for not finishing the work, but pay them more money to finish it. And this is something which is of interest to the city. Is the old data that they began to collect back in 2022 still valid after all this time? Should we really be throwing good money after bad if we pay this much to have them survey our streets and our sidewalks and not complete the work? And so that's going to be the main topic. The main piece of information that you will see on the city's website is essentially a sales pitch from the company asking to continue to do this. They show off their technology. Apparently they have machines that they roll along the streets and sidewalks that take accurate measurements with lasers and map out using GPS exactly where all the imperfections are and put it in the database. The question is, should we go ahead and continue to finance this at a cost which could amount to as much as $400,000? And so that's the second item. I personally would like to see them look at this and take care of the hazards, which especially for people who are disabled, who are in a wheelchair and need to get around. I'd like to see them handle that. I'd like to see them fix the streets, because when I was campaigning for a seat on the city council, one of the biggest complaints I got was that it was street maintenance. People were complaining about the potholes and the gutters and the curbs and other things that needed work. So I definitely like to see this work done by someone. The question is, should we continue with this contract, or should we just, again, not throw good money after bad and start fresh? So that's going to be the question that comes up during the second part of the work session.
It's important, if you're interested in making public comment, that you do so early and often. Along in the process, many topics might be best said more heavily considered in commission meetings or planning commission meetings or perhaps traffic and safety commission meetings versus being heard in city council meetings. Many times, as you see, I think maybe 3 weeks ago now, there were 5 pages of consent agenda items for consideration and a fast city council vote on a whole alphabet of 9A through M considerations. Now, each one of those individually quite important and amass every week when those things happen thousands of dollars. thousands of your dollars. Now, I say get involved early because these surveys, the surveys are, their surveys are many times guiding the public to give feedback on something that furthers city staff interest in proposal. That's my opinion. That's my observation. I've made many, not all, of city council meetings, most in person, a supplemental few on YouTube and viewed those. I've done none by Zoom, but I've witnessed letters to council often aren't acknowledged. They're not. You don't receive any notation of receipt of your comment. You don't know if it paid attention to or not. And recently, I made public inquiry for what public safety systems existed and were utilized and depended upon by the city of Laramie. And this followed earlier that day or the day before, it followed a tornado incident in Albany County. Now, it wasn't in the city limits, and there's criteria that trigger certain safety systems. But in 7 days, I received zero response to a public safety question from the talk shop. And upon follow-up, on the 7th day after city council meeting, and there was no mention of this in the city council meeting proceedings, I followed up with a second email. Now this one got a higher level of attention in that 2 or 3 city council or their designees were referred and responded to my informational question. I don't find this responsiveness tolerable. I was told by one city council member, I have 4 jobs. Funny though, I heard none of that campaigning. I heard none of that in their campaign literature. I read none of that. I have 4 jobs. I'm too busy to respond responsively to you as citizens. I didn't see that, folks. Now, I don't want to be too harsh. I realize time is precious. So's mine. And so is yours. And we are citizens of this community, and I believe public comment should be revered. I don't appreciate public comment not being allowed on multiple consent agenda items. That meeting 3 or 4 weeks ago had 5 pages of public comment or public comment denied on consent agenda items. They pass through, and then you're left with 1 page and maybe 30% of a second page dedicated to regular business, of which public comment was taken at the beginning of the very meeting, the entire meeting. So you could weigh in personally and say, I'd like 9A taken off the agenda. You could openly do that in your 3 minutes at the beginning of the meeting. But then, often, hours of presentations and hours of council deliberation and discussion can ensue before, at the very end of the meeting, just before adjournment, the public is given another opportunity. Now, this isn't always the case. There's been vast inconsistency in handling of public comment. But I remember when public comment was, it was something of a speed test. You'd hear in 2024, you'd hear a call for public comment, and seconds might pass, only seconds, before they move on from there. And Brett, you attend often. Is that a consistent observation from your perspective, or am I being too harsh?
Well, my perception, and I mentioned this again when I was campaigning to get a seat on the council, which I didn't win, was that council members, after a certain amount of time, tend to burn out. They're paid very poorly for the amount of time that they spend being a council member, between not only the official meetings but the work sessions, and then their time spent as liaisons to various boards and commissions.
More than
and groups.
50 of those groups and organizations.
That's correct. And so they tend to burn out under the load of all this. They're not paid richly like our city manager is, and maybe they should be, in fact, if they're really doing the work. And so they have a tendency to read the packet at the last minute, to rubber stamp things, to just go along with the staff's suggestions, and just not to rock the boat. And the staff, in turn, actually tends to find ways to do less work. Very often, instead of doing something that should be done in-house as part of our city government, they will hire a consultant or some other outside firm to do work which surely should be done in-house. A good example is this item regarding street and sidewalk maintenance. Shouldn't our city employees themselves be walking the streets, walking the sidewalks? I know that for some years ago we had a very active zoning inspector who went around to look for weed nuisances and such and trash. But nowadays you don't hear much about anybody walking around from the city itself and actually looking to see where are there hazards, where are there problems with infrastructure. Instead, we have consultants who don't necessarily do the job, who take 3 years and still don't complete a contract. And so we get the outsourcing.
That's an expansion. Yeah. That's an expansion of government, isn't it?
Yeah, and last week I talked about the light poles, which the city is paying nearly $5,000 a piece for. Where instead of doing their own shopping, they outsourced the search for a supplier to a third party, which shopped around and then sent them to a major distributor, which didn't give them any real discount on it. In fact, I think they overcharged them. They could have done better shopping. If they had done better shopping, they might not even have needed to go out for bid on the item, because the legislature just raised the threshold for the amount of money you need before the project needs to cost before you go out for bid. It was $75,000. It is entirely possible that the city could have cut the cost of the project by careful shopping to a level where they could just go ahead and place the order instead of going through the whole rigmarole of a bid process. Now, I'm not in favor of the city cutting corners and failing to do a bid process when it should, but on the other hand, in this case, they might have saved a lot of money if they just shopped better. So again, I really think that we need council to become more involved. And it shouldn't cut things like crazy. It shouldn't over-economize. It shouldn't cut things with a chainsaw like Elon Musk recently attempted to do with the federal government. But it really should keep an eye on things. It should definitely keep an eye on how the city's money is spent, how the taxpayers' money is spent, and should make sure that things really get done, and as much as possible is done locally. I think that my personal opinion, and this is my personal opinion, not just the facts laid out on the sheet, is that we should have ridden herd on this contractor who was supposed to survey our streets and sidewalks long ago.
Year one?
Yes, we should have reviewed it after a year. We shouldn't have waited 3 years before we said, oh, wait a minute, this project isn't done. And so we really, we need to get on the ball. And I'm not sure of the best way to fix that. I think perhaps one good way to do it, and I've mentioned this before, is to have an elected mayor whose feet we can hold to the fire about this directly, at the voting booth, rather than having a city manager that's hired by council and is one move away from the public.
Appointed, yeah.
And again, I think we need to become more involved. Too often, when the city council calls for comment, no one says anything. And there are a lot of issues that need attention. So I hope that the public will get more involved and that the council will listen.
Imagine if you said one thing on one issue in 12 months. No more, no less. Would that be 30,000 views expressed on various topics throughout the course of a year? Would that be more valuable or less valuable?
Well, it would slow down the meetings a little, but I think that's what the meetings are for, and I think it would be worth it myself. I personally would like to see the public chiming in every week on one issue or another and prodding council and saying, why haven't you handled things like parking, which they have paid no attention to so far this year? Why haven't we talked about other things? Again, why haven't we dealt with these infrastructure problems instead of just hiring a consultant to take who knows how many more years to identify them? I think I think the public should. I think the public would benefit from becoming more involved and asking government to serve them the way it should.
Do you have personal interests? Do you have commercial interests? Perhaps you have something that's not been considered. Maybe it's your concern about the airport board and operation of the Laramie Regional Airport. Maybe your interest is, why do we have so many public employees sitting and standing on this board versus members of the aviation world themselves, or citizen pilots, or perhaps other experts and professionals in the community? Why has there not been a greater effort with respect to transitioning to that board? Is that a work session topic? Perhaps it's been asked for. Has it been discouraged by city staff? Maybe, maybe not. We don't know, and frankly, we don't know enough. So let's talk, let's listen, and let's learn. This is the Talk Shop, your Monday. And we want to remind you the 2025 schedule of events for Wyoming's Hometown Celebration. Available now at LaramieJubileeDays.com. Tonight's event, the Joe Daller Memorial Calcutta. That'll be at Bud's Bar, 6 p.m. And we'll see you there. We appreciate you joining us, Brett, each and every Monday.